We are now on the record. This begins videotape number 1 in the deposition of Gale Tetzlaff in the matter of in re opioid litigation in the Supreme Court of the State of New York, County of Suffolk. Today is November 20th, 2019, and the time is 9:05 a.m. This deposition is being taken at Bryan Cave Leighton Paisner. The videographer is Chris Grega of Magna Legal Services, and the court reporter is Adrian Miano, also of Magna Legal Services. Will counsel please state their appearance and who they represent?
Michael Reisman from the New York State Office of the Attorney General.
Holly Nybert, Simmons Hanley Conroy for Suffolk County.
Sarah Burns, Simmons Hanley Conroy for Suffolk County.
Andrew O'Connor from Mallinckrodt LLC, Spec GX, and the witness.
Cassandra LaRussa, Ropes and Gray from Mallinckrodt LLC, Spec GX, and the witness.
Will the notary please swear in the witness?
What, can you swear in the witness?
You have her ask her this morning. Swear that that's what she's going to.
Okay. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is true, to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Tetzlaff. We met a few minutes ago. I'm Michael Reisman. I am an Assistant Attorney General with the Office of the New York State Attorney General, one of the plaintiffs in this case. At the beginning of this deposition, we'll just go over some ground rules. So my first question is, have you ever testified before in a legal proceeding?
No, I haven't.
So we'll go over some ground rules. We're making a record. The court reporter sitting next to me is recording my questions and will be recording your answers. To ensure a clear and accurate record, it's important that only one person speak at a time. Does that sound fair?
Yes?
Also, you need to give clear verbal answers. For example, no nods of the head or head shakes. Do you understand that?
I do?
If you don't understand a question, please let me know. If you answer, I'll assume that you understood the question. Is that fair?
Okay, yes, that's fair.
If you need a break, just let me know and we'll try to accommodate you. However, if there's a question pending, you'll need to answer it, okay?
Okay.
Is there any reason why you're not able to give full and truthful testimony today?
No?
Do you understand that your testimony is under oath, just as if a judge and jury were in this room?
I do.
What is your understanding as to why you're here today?
I've been asked to give testimony in the legal matter that was referenced in the opening.
Do you understand that we're all here today because the state of New York and counties in New York have brought a lawsuit against a number of defendants, including Mallinckrodt and Spec GX, in what's commonly been referred to as the opioid litigation?
Yes.
Without telling me about the substance of any conversations with lawyers, what did you do to prepare for your deposition today?
I met with the attorneys.
When did you meet with them?
One day last week and yesterday.
With whom did you meet?
With these two Ropes and Gray attorneys and one of their other colleagues.
So the two attorneys sitting to your right are Mr. O'Connor and Ms. LaRussa?
Yes.
Is that right?
That's right.
Who else was present at the meetings?
Just their colleague who participated in the meeting last week, but not yesterday.
Do you remember that person's name?
Bill Davison.
Is he also an attorney at Ropes and Gray?
Yes, he is.
During the meeting last week, how long did that meeting take?
About 7 hours.
How about the meeting this week?
The same, about 7 hours.
During those two meetings with counsel, did you review any documents?
Yes.
Approximately how many?
I'm not sure, maybe a dozen.
Who selected those documents?
the attorneys.
Did you bring anything to those meetings?
I didn't.
Did any of the documents that you reviewed during those meetings refresh your recollection to help you remember things that happened in the past?
I better recalled certain topics, yes.
We'll be going through some documents today, so I'll ask that if you see any document today that you reviewed during preparations that helped you remember things, that you let me know when we get to those documents, okay?
Okay.
Who is your current employer?
Mallinckrodt?
When you say Mallinckrodt, are you referring to Mallinckrodt LLC?
I don't know. I'm referring to Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals.
Okay. When did you start working with Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals?
In 1985.
To save time today, I want to start with your present role and then work backwards.
Okay.
What is your current position with Mallinckrodt?
I am Director of Financial Compliance and Transparency.
How long have you had that role?
About 9 years.
During the past 9 years, have you had any other titles?
I mean, slight variations on that title, but a Director of Compliance focused on financial compliance.
What generally are your duties in that role?
My current duties are primarily related to the company's HCP or healthcare professional spend transparency reporting, such as open payments.
Can you say a little bit more about what that entails? And what does that reporting require you personally to do?
My current responsibilities, I manage the collection of data related to the company's payments to or provisions of items to covered recipients required under the reporting regulations.
And by those regulations, do you mean the open payments regulations?
I do, primarily. Yes.
During the last few years, has the amount or the number of payments that Mallinckrodt has made to healthcare providers changed in any way? Has it gone up? Has it gone down?
It's actually declined over the last few years.
Has it declined a lot?
In some areas, yes.
Have you ever had the title Director of Government Reporting Compliance at Mallinckrodt?
Yes. Yes.
When?
During the early part of my tenure in compliance, so probably 2010 to more recently. And I don't remember when the title changed. I mean, my responsibilities evolved, but I don't remember when a title change happened. It wasn't, it was a business title change to better reflect the current responsibilities of transparency reporting.
When you had the title of Director of Government Reporting Compliance, did your duties include compliance with respect to opioids?
Objection to form.
I'm sorry, can you say the question again?
Sure. When you had the title of Director of Government Reporting Compliance, did your duties include compliance with respect to opioids?
Same objection.
My duties did involve responsibilities related to our suspicious order monitoring program.
What were your responsibilities with respect to Mallinckrodt's suspicious order monitoring program, which we'll abbreviate today as SOMP, if that's okay with you?
Okay. My first involvement with the program was to be part of a team that was working on enhancements to the program.
Approximately when did you have your first involvement with the team?
I think it was late in 2011.
What team are you talking about?
The suspicious order monitoring team.
What is your understanding of why the suspicious order monitoring team, or SOMT, was working on enhancements?
The program is a very important program, and I was brought in because of my familiarity with data and data analysis to provide some expertise in that area so that the program could evolve.
Is data important to Mallinckrodt's SOMP?
Yes.
Why is it important to Mallinckrodt's SOMP?
Well, data is a factor that helps provide information related to the required monitoring of our orders of controlled substances.
Can you give me an example of a type of data that's important to monitoring of suspicious orders?
Well, the data related to the order itself. So there are elements such as timing and quantity and product.
Anything else?
Customer.
What about the customer?
The identity of the customer is a relevant data point.
Is data about prescribers of Mallinckrodt's opioid products important to Mallinckrodt's SOMP?
Objection to form.
No, that isn't part of the data that was utilized in the SOMP.
So that type of data was never used in Mallinckrodt's SOMP? Is that your testimony?
Objection to form.
The prescriber data was not a component of the data analyzed in our SOMP.
I want to go back to the question I asked about the enhancements that you said the SOMT was working on. What is your understanding of why they were working on enhancements?
Objection to form.
I don't know, prior to my tenure on the team, I don't know what developments in industry or other developments had occurred, but I was brought on to the team with the understanding that there were enhancements that were desired to the program.
Who brought you onto the team?
A colleague, Don Lohman, in the legal department.
So Mr. Lohman told you that enhancements were necessary for Mallinckrodt's SOMP?
Objection to form, and instructing the witness not to answer if it reveals any attorney-client communication with Mr. Lohman, who's an attorney.
I'm sorry, now repeat the question, please.
So my question is whether Mr. Lohman told you that enhancements were necessary for Mallinckrodt's SOMP.
Same objection to form and privilege.
I was not given the impression that enhancements were necessary, but that enhancements were desirable.
What sorts of enhancements were desirable?
I mean, really, as with all analysis and algorithms, there was a thoughtful process to evaluate the ability of the data analysis to identify orders for additional review. So we went through a process of reviewing that part of the program.
When you became a member of Mallinckrodt's suspicious order monitoring team, who were the other members?
Don Lohman and Karen Harper and for a time a security colleague,
What's his name?
John Gillis. And as a part of the team for a time, a direct reporting to me, Jen Buist, was also a participant in the team.
Is her last name spelled B-U-I-S-T?
It is.
Anybody else?
Those are the regular members of the team that I recall.
When you joined the SOMT, to whom did you report?
I reported to the compliance officer for Mallinckrodt at the time, Brian Ellsbernd.
Could you please spell his last name?
Sure, it's E-L-S-B-E-R-N-D.
When you joined the SOMT, did you have any discussions with the other members of the team, leaving aside Mr. Lohman for the moment, about the reasons for enhancements to the SOMP?
Not in great detail, no.
How about in less than great detail?
Just the, I was aware that there had been perhaps review of the program, and that perhaps by a governmental body that and it was desirable to review and potentially enhance the program.
What governmental body did you just refer to?
It might have been a DEA meeting, but I'm not sure.
Is that the Drug Enforcement Agency?
Yes.
So your testimony is that there might have been review by the DEA around the time that you joined the SOMT.
Objection.
Is that right?
Objection to form.
I don't know what came before my tenure.
Ms. Tetzlaff, do you consider yourself to be a compliance professional?
Objection to form.
I work on compliance responsibilities, yes.
So you testified earlier that you have worked in a compliance role for Mallinckrodt for the last 9 years, correct?
Yes.
Is it your testimony that at the time you joined Mallinckrodt's SOMT around the year 2011, you were not aware of whether Mallinckrodt was being investigated by the DEA?
Objection to form.
I'm not aware of an investigation, no.
And I'm asking this question in general terms, in your role as a compliance professional. If a governmental agency is investigating your company that you are in a compliance role for, is that important to know about?
Objection to form.
The compliance team, I was part of a corporate compliance team with varied responsibilities, and the specific responsibilities related to the opioid products and DEA regulations was not part of my expertise at all before.
That was not responsive to my question, so I will ask it again. Ms. Tetzlaff, in your role as a compliance professional, if a governmental agency is investigating your company in an area for which you have responsibility, is it important to know about that investigation?
Objection to form, asked and answered.
The answer to my question is in the fact that that particular area of responsibility was not mine. There were others in the company who would have been handling that area.
So is your testimony that it was not important for you personally, Gale Tetzlaff, to know about the DEA's investigation of Mallinckrodt?
Objection.
It's a yes/no question.
Yes, because there were colleagues who were very much involved in that topic.
You said yes, so do you mean that it was important for you to know about the DEA's investigation of Mallinckrodt?
My personal involvement was not relevant at that time. It was not my responsibility. I lost the thread, I'm sorry.
Okay. Ms. Tetzlaff,
to
I'm
know
asking you
about the
questions
DEA
today. Okay?
investigation.
Do you understand that? I'm asking you questions.
Yes, of course.
Okay. I feel like you're not really answering my questions. You're answering different questions. So I will try to make things as clear as I can. We're talking about the 2011 timeframe when you joined Mallinckrodt's suspicious order monitoring team. Okay?
Okay.
And that suspicious order monitoring team had oversight over compliance with respect to opioids, correct?
The monitoring of orders, yes.
Of opioid orders, correct?
Of opioid orders, yes.
At that time, was it important for you as a member of the suspicious order monitoring team to be knowledgeable about governmental investigations of Mallinckrodt, including the DEA's investigation?
Objections. Asked and answered.
My answer is no, as my personal role, because others were more aware of the details of the relationship with the DEA than I needed to be.
Before 2010, what was your role at Mallinckrodt in the years immediately preceding 2010?
I'm an accountant by training, and I had various accounting and finance roles. The one right before I joined compliance was as the controller of the shared services functions.
Can you briefly describe what that included?
Yes, the support functions for the company as a whole, like HR and legal and finance.
For how long did you have that role?
Oh, that role, probably 7 years or so.
Would you consider that to be a compliance-related function?
Objection to form.
That was not part of the compliance function, no.
So in approximately 2010, you moved into the compliance department at Mallinckrodt, is that right?
Yes, the corporate compliance department.
So before 2010, had you ever had a role in Mallinckrodt's corporate compliance department?
No.
You mentioned that you started at Mallinckrodt in 1985, correct?
Yes.
What was your role then?
I was an accountant.
So is it fair to say that between 1985 and approximately 2010, you had accountancy-related roles at Mallinckrodt?
Yes, accounting and finance roles, yes.
And you testified that you were brought onto the suspicious order monitoring team because of your experience with data. Is that right?
Yes, that's my understanding.
When you joined the SOMT, did you have any conversations with either Ms. Harper, Mr. Gillis, Ms. Buist, or anyone else, leaving aside Mr. Lohman, about the enhancements that were planned for Mallinckrodt's SOMP?
Yes. We had conversations about the program, yes.
Did they tell you, any of them, what they thought needed to be enhanced?
I don't remember the specific conversations, but of course the topic of the program would have involved the elements of the program.
Sure. In general terms, what did they tell you about the enhancements that they thought were needed?
Well, I don't recall it in the context of needed enhancements. It was more about from my perspective, the information that was available and the processes by which we would review it.
Did anyone tell you something to the effect of the processes at that time needed improvement?
Objection to form.
No.
So why were you brought in? Why were you necessary?
Objection to form.
I was brought in to help review the program, and as often happens with programs, to to ensure that it was functioning and robust.
Are you still a member of the suspicious order monitoring team?
No.
When did you stop being a member?
I don't remember the exact time frame. Probably in the 2014-2015 time frame.
What is your recollection of why you stopped being a member of the SOMT?
Well, the aspect of my corporate compliance responsibilities related to the company's transparency reporting was really increasing even in 2013 when open payments launched in 2013. And as those responsibilities took a larger and larger share of my time, as the company grew and the responsibilities related to transparency reporting grew.
Did anyone replace you on the SOMT?
I don't know the subsequent structure of the team.
During the time frame from 2010 through 2015, you mentioned earlier that Ms. Buist reported to you. Is that right?
For a time she did, yes.
Did anyone else report to you during that time?
Not in a role related to the suspicious order monitoring process, no.
Did you have other reports at the time?
I don't remember the time frame. I had 2 reports related to the transparency reporting processes.
Who were they?
Sandy Nordman and Amber Gottlieb.
Did those 2 people have any responsibilities relating to suspicious order monitoring?
No, they didn't.
You mentioned earlier that you reported to Brian Ellsburn, is that right?
Yes.
Do you know to whom he reported?
I believe at the time he reported to the general counsel, probably.
Who was the general counsel at the time?
Trying to remember. It might have been Joe Wessner, but I don't remember for sure.
To whom do you report today?
Today I report to Michelle Robertson.
What's her title?
She's the Chief Compliance Officer, Senior VP, and Chief Compliance Officer.
Are you paid a bonus?
I am.
What is that bonus based on?
As someone in a corporate function, it's based on the component of it is based on my personal performance, and another component is based on the company's overall performance.
How is the company's overall performance measured?
I think it's varied. I'm not sure if it's. I think at the corporate level, it's based on probably income or earnings per share for the company as a whole.
Does revenue play a role in the company performance aspect of bonus?
It has at times. I don't recall the more recent, I don't recall the bonus structure at the time that we're talking about. I don't know.
When did you first learn that you were going to be testifying as a witness in this litigation?
Probably about 3 weeks ago, I think.
Did you ever receive a litigation hold notice for this litigation?
Probably, I don't remember.
Do you know what a litigation hold notice looks like?
I do,
Do you think it's important to comply with those notices if you receive them?
of course.
Have you ever received one?
Yes,
But you can't remember whether you received one for this litigation.
that's right.
Do you know whether your emails were put on hold for this litigation?
I don't know for sure. I believe that they were.
What's the basis for your belief?
The fact that I reviewed a document that was an email that I had generated.
I'm sorry, which document are you talking about?
Objection on the basis of privilege, instructing not to answer to the extent you're referring to a document that we selected and reviewed together.
I'm sorry, I'm instructing you not to answer.
On the basis of privilege, to the extent she's referring to a document that we selected and reviewed with her together.
Are you referring to a document that attorneys selected for your review during your preparation for this deposition?
Yes,
Are you going to not answer the question based on counsel's advice?
that's right.
I'll just note for the record that the question is really going to whether Ms. Tetzlaff recalls receiving a litigation hold notice in this litigation, which is a completely fair question. So maybe I'll rephrase the question so you can answer it. Is there anything that leads you to believe that your emails were put on hold for this litigation?
Just an assumption. I don't know for sure.
At any point related to this litigation, did anyone collect your laptop or scan your laptop for documents?
I provided documents related, I think, to this litigation
To whom?
to an internal legal department colleague.
Approximately when?
Maybe a year ago? I don't remember.
When you say you provided documents, are you talking about electronic documents or paper documents or both
Electronic documents.
that were on your computer?
Yes, where I store documents, yes.
Do you so you store documents on your own hard drive, or is it a shared drive?
It's a shared drive.
What's the shared drive called?
I there's a path. It's got a folder named compliance. I'm not even sure which. I actually get data requests periodically, and I'm not sure which documents were requested for this particular matter. But I store documents in a shared drive.
So I want to make sure
Under-
I understand. When you said a moment ago that you gave someone documents, what documents did you give and to whom?
I honestly don't know for sure that it was relevant to this individual matter. But if I was asked for documents related to sometimes as a person with financial information, as part of my responsibility, I'm asked to provide data related to a particular subject. And in this case, I believe the request was related to opioids.
Do you work on a computer that you personally own?
No, I work on a company laptop for my business responsibilities.
Do you have a home office?
No.
Do you keep hard copies of documents on which you're working?
My permanent storage of company documents is electronic. If I print something, for temporary use, I dispose of it appropriately.
Have you ever maintained paper documents in your office?
Yes.
In connection with this litigation, did anyone come to you and ask you for your paper hard copy documents to collect them for this litigation?
I don't remember specifically, like I said, about this particular litigation, if I received a hold notice or if I was asked for documents, I provided all the relevant documents that I had.
When you say you provided all the relevant documents that you had, what time frame are you referring to?
I don't know, because I don't know for sure what request may have related to this particular matter.
So you may have given documents, but then again, you may not have. Is that right?
Objection to form.
If I was asked for documents relevant to this particular matter, I provided them.
But your testimony under oath is you can't remember getting that request, right?
Objection to form.
I can't remember for sure whether a particular request for document provision was related to this matter.
During the period of time when you were on the suspicious order monitoring team, what databases did you access in connection with your work on the SOMT?
Objection to form.
It's a lot of years ago, but the data that we used in our analyses was from the order system. I don't recall what the financial system is called.
Were there any other data sources or databases that you used at that time?
That's very broad. Data sources, systems, or?
Systems, applications, databases?
The suspicious order monitoring process, the data for the review of orders came out of the order system. So as far as data sources, that would be the data source on that.
Were there any other data sources
Objection to form.
that you personally used or
Were used.
had access to during the period of time when you were part of the SOMT?
Same objection.
I don't really understand the relevance of the question in terms of the data sources. So that we reviewed the data from the order system.
Okay.
And
I don't mean to interrupt you. Go on.
no, that's fine.
Okay. So we've established that you reviewed data from the order system. What I'm trying to understand is, you said a few minutes ago that you were brought on to the SOMT because of your experience with data. So my question very simply is, were there any other data sources that you ever at any time used or had access to during the years in which you were part of the suspicious order monitoring team?
Objection.
Yes, I had access to data, yes.
For example, what data source?
If the, as part of the process of monitoring orders, if an order was identified for additional review, we would utilize available data sources that might involve, data sources is very broad. We might obtain information from colleagues or from information available about a particular entity.
What kinds of information would you obtain from colleagues?
It would depend on the reason that we were reviewing a particular order.
As you sit here today, can you recall any type of data that you asked a colleague for in connection with your work on the SOMT?
We would ask about the for example, the position of Mallinckrodt on a customer's supplier structure.
Can you say a little bit more about what that means, a customer's supplier structure?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to describe it. If we were looking at an order and wanted to understand that order relative to a history of ordering, it would be, we would ask a colleague for information related to, for example, is Mallinckrodt the primary supplier for that customer? Has something changed? That type of information.
What's your understanding of where that information was maintained?
I don't know how that information was stored.
Okay, so you would ask a colleague for information related to the primary supplier for a customer. What would the colleague tell you then?
Objection to form.
Well, the colleague's response would obviously depend on the question. If we were asking that specific question about the relationship between Mallinckrodt and that customer and changes, to that positioning, that would be the information that they would provide.
So they were able to answer your question, correct?
Yes.
So they had access to a database that would allow them to answer your question, correct?
Objection to form.
I don't know the source of their information.
Why were you in the position in the first place of asking that type of question? For example, you mentioned whether Mallinckrodt was a primary supplier.
Objection.
Why did you ask a colleague for that information?
Same objection.
The information gathering that I'm referring to was part of the review of orders identified via our suspicious order monitoring program.
Why was it part of that program?
Because the purpose of the program was to identify orders for which we wanted to do additional review.
Why was Mallinckrodt's position as a supplier relevant to that program?
Because the size of a particular order would be impacted by whether the product was supplied to that customer primarily by Mallinckrodt as part of a relationship or primarily from some other supplier with us as a secondary supplier.
What's the name of a person that you would go to with that sort of question about the supplier structure during that time period?
Yeah, I don't. It's been a lot of years, and so I don't remember the colleagues' names. They were product manager type business colleagues who would be knowledgeable about those things.
So those were not people in the compliance function, correct?
That's correct. They were.
And they were
People-
not part of the suspicious order monitoring team, correct?
That's correct.
Switching gears a little bit, Ms. Tetzlaff, do you believe that the United States is in the middle of an opioid epidemic?
Objection to form.
I mean, I see the news. There is a health issue related to opioid addiction, yes.
Do you believe that it's an epidemic?
Objection to form.
I don't know whether it's an epidemic.
What makes you think that there is a health issue related to opioids?
The news.
What specifically on the news?
Well, the issue of abuse of opioids and addiction to opioids and illegal opioids.
How long do you think that there has been a health issue in this country with respect to opioids?
Objection to form.
I don't know.
When's the first time you remember hearing about it?
I don't know. I don't know.
When you joined the suspicious order monitoring team, were you aware that the United States had a health issue with respect to opioids?
No, not in the way that it is in the news today, no.
At that time, when you joined the SOMT, did you have any conversations with colleagues about the opioid epidemic?
Objection to form.
No,
Did you ever have any conversations about the opioid epidemic with colleagues at Mallinckrodt?
Objection to form.
not about the opioid epidemic, no.
Have you ever had any conversations with anyone at Mallinckrodt about health issues related to opioids?
As someone discussing the news, obviously, and the company's efforts to do what it can to be part of the solution, frankly.
Have you ever had any conversations with anyone at Mallinckrodt about the fact that people have become addicted to Mallinckrodt's opioids?
Objection to form.
No.
Do you have any friends or family that have suffered from an opioid addiction?
No.
Is it your understanding that Mallinckrodt has been one of the largest makers and sellers of opioids in the United States over the last several decades?
Objection to form.
I see the statistics that are in the news, and understand that we are a supplier of opioid products, yes.
That wasn't my question, Ms. Tetzlaff. My question was, is it your understanding that Mallinckrodt has been one of the largest makers and sellers of opioids in the United States over the last several decades?
Objection.
I don't know that statistic, so I can't say that that's my understanding. I don't know the statistic, and it would be, product specific. As far as our share of the supply.
You're an accountant, right?
Yes.
Have you ever, during your 34 years at Mallinckrodt, looked at one of Mallinckrodt's filings with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission?
Probably in a role back in the 90s.
But not since then?
No. Not.
Have you ever looked at any of Mallinckrodt's annual reports?
Again, as part of my responsibilities back in the 90s, I would have reviewed company reports.
So since the 90s, you've never looked at Mallinckrodt's annual reports?
No, not really, no.
I'm asking, again, just in general, not whether you had responsibility over that content, but whether you as an employee of Mallinckrodt in a compliance function for the last 10 years, in particular, whether you have looked at any of Mallinckrodt's annual reports.
No.
Going back to your time on the suspicious order monitoring team, is it your understanding that the law requires manufacturers and distributors of controlled substances to have systems to detect suspicious orders of controlled substances?
Yes, that's my
Objection to
understanding.
And is it also your understanding that suspicious orders are defined to include, but are not limited to, orders of unusual size, pattern, or frequency?
Yes, I'm familiar with that phrase, yes.
And are you also familiar with the legal requirements that manufacturers and distributors of controlled substances, including opioids, inform agencies, the DEA at the federal level, and in a state like New York, a state agency, in particular the Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement, of suspicious orders?
I was familiar with the requirement to report suspicious orders to the DEA.
How about to the New York State Bureau of Narcotic Enforcement?
I was not aware of that.
Did you ever have any discussions with any colleagues at Mallinckrodt about the New York State Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement?
Not that I recall, no.
Your title at the time was Director of Government Reporting Compliance, correct?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the term diversion?
Yes.
What's your understanding of what that term means?
To me, that would be the it's hard to define a word without the word. the illegal or inappropriate movement of something to a place where it's not supposed to be.
Would you agree that if opioids go to a place where they're not supposed to be, that people are at risk of becoming addicted to opioids?
Objection to form.
The risk of diversion is real.
And would you agree that the risk of diversion creates a risk of people getting addicted to opioids that are diverted?
Objection to form.
I'm not a healthcare professional, but I'm familiar with the fact that opioids have properties that can impact people, and they can become addicted.
Would you agree that preventing diversion is important?
Yes.
Would you agree that preventing diversion may lower the risk of people becoming addicted to opioids?
Objection to form.
I don't know what the cause and effect of that would be.
You testified a moment ago that opioids have properties that can impact people and they can become addicted, correct?
Yes.
So if opioid diversion is stopped, then it is less likely for people to become addicted to opioids, correct?
Objection to form.
If diversion were stopped or reduced, I guess by definition there would be less product in places where it shouldn't be.
And less product for people to become addicted to, correct?
I'm not a healthcare professional, but there would be less product in places where it shouldn't be.
There would be less product in places where it shouldn't be for people to become addicted to, correct?
Objection to form.
There would be less product in places where it shouldn't be, and that's, I don't know what the health cause and effect of that would be, but there would be less product in where it shouldn't be.
But your testimony under oath is that opioids are addictive, correct?
People can become addicted to opioids. That is something that I am aware of from the news. I'm not a healthcare professional.
So if there is less diversion, which you defined as opioids going to places where they shouldn't be, it is less likely for people to become addicted to those opioids, correct?
Objection. Asked and answered.
There would be less product in places where it shouldn't be. I don't know the cause and effect of individuals becoming addicted. I'm not a healthcare professional. I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay, fair enough. Would you agree with me that if there's less diversion, which means fewer opioids going to places where they shouldn't be, there would be less or fewer addictive opioids out there?
I don't
Objection
know
to
that.
form.
I don't know the cause and effect of that.
I'm not
know.
asking you about cause and effect. I'm just asking about the product, okay? So you testified that opioids are addictive, correct?
I said that I am aware as a lay person that an opioid can be addictive. Yes.
Is it a good thing for opioids not to get to places where they shouldn't be?
Yes.
Objection.
And is it a reason Is it a good thing in part because if opioids get to places where they shouldn't be, people might become addicted to them?
Objection.
I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm reluctant to answer a question that I have no expertise about. I don't know what individuals might become addicted to opioids or the process by which they obtain them, so I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay. Fair enough. I'm not asking you for a healthcare opinion. I'm asking you for an answer to a question based on your experience as a layperson and based on your experience as a compliance person. Okay, so the question is, if diversion means, in the context of opioids, opioid products getting to places where they shouldn't be, is it a good thing to prevent diversion?
Objection to form. This has been asked and answered in many different forms already.
You can answer.
It is desirable to prevent diversion. Yeah.
If diversion occurs, diversion of opioids, is that a problem?
It's a problem for the system. It's a legal problem.
Why is it a problem?
Because if product is diverted, it's not getting to the legitimate patients who need it.
Where is it getting?
I don't know. I don't know.
Council, we've been on about an hour. Should we take a break?
Sure. Off the record, please.
We're off the record at 10:07 a.m.